Chapter 1. The Night They Arrived. The city of Boston is quiet at midnight. A light rain has been falling for the past hour, thin and cold, the kind that doesn't soak you but never quite stops. The streets around the Hargrove Museum of Fine Art are empty. The museum itself sits at the edge of a wide, dark avenue, a grand stone building with tall iron lanterns on either side of its entrance, the kind of place that looks permanent, unmovable, built to outlast everything around it. Two men walk up the front path. They are dressed as police officers. The uniforms are correct. The badges are correct. They carry themselves with the particular ease of men who are used to being let inside places without being questioned. One of them, broader, older, moving slowly, keeps his hands loose at his sides. The other is younger, leaner, eyes already scanning the building as he walks. Inside, at the front security desk, a 24-year-old guard named Danny Holt is finishing a cup of coffee. He has worked at the Hargrove for 8 months. He is the kind of young man who takes his job seriously, who double-checks the door locks at the top of every hour, who has never once fallen asleep on a shift. Tonight he is tired. He has been here since 6 in the evening and has 4 more hours to go. He looks up at the sound of a knock on the glass. 2 police officers, standing at the front entrance. One of them holds up a badge. Danny sets down his coffee. He gets up and walks to the door, and through the glass he studies them. Something in his chest hesitates, not quite a feeling he can name, just a small, quiet pull. But they look real. The badges look real. The uniforms look right. The older one leans toward the door. His voice comes through muffled but clear. "We got a disturbance call from this address. Need to come inside and take a look around." Danny thinks for just a moment. Then he unlocks the door. The 2 men step inside. The lock clicks. In the security room at the back of the building, the second guard, a 51-year-old man named Victor Crane, is watching the corridor monitors. He hears footsteps he doesn't recognize. He stands up. He reaches for the phone. He does not get to use it. If stories like this interest you, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Chapter 2. The Perfect Theft begins. Victor and Danny are restrained quickly and without violence, zip ties around their wrists secured to fixed pipes in the basement utility room. The 2 men in uniforms say almost nothing. They move like people who have rehearsed this. Every action is clean. Every second is accounted for. Victor later tells investigators that the whole thing felt rehearsed, like watching someone perform a task they had done 100 times before. The 2 men separate. They each take a different wing of the museum. And this is where the night becomes strange. The Hargroves houses some of the most valuable privately donated artwork on the East Coast. On the 2nd floor, in the East Gallery, there is a large Flemish landscape painting, an enormous, luminous piece, the jewel of the entire collection, valued at somewhere between $30 and $40 million. It hangs in a wide, gilded frame at the center of the room. It is impossible to miss. They walk past it without stopping. In the Dutch Masters corridor, they pass 3 portraits that together would fetch more than $20 million at international auction. They leave them untouched. Instead, they take a small canvas from a minor Italian painter, dark, quiet, easy to miss even when you were standing directly in front of it. They take a series of pen and ink drawings from a glass case on the 3rd floor. They take a small bronze decorative object from a display shelf near the main staircase. They take a Chinese ceramic piece from the Asian collection, not the most valuable in the room, not even close. The total value of everything removed that night is later estimated at somewhere between $4 and $6 million. The total value of what was left behind is more than $60 million. An investigator standing in those empty rooms the following morning would later describe the feeling as looking at a sentence with the wrong words taken out. The grammar of the crime made no sense. The 2 men work for 83 minutes. Then they walk back through the basement corridor, past the utility room where Danny and Victor are still restrained, and out through a side service exit. They do not run. No one sees them go. Chapter 3. Detective Michael Reed takes the case. By 7 in the morning, Detective Michael Reed is standing in the empty Dutch Masters corridor, studying a blank rectangular patch on the wall where the pen and ink drawings had hung. The paper backing of the frames is still there. The thieves had cut the pieces out neatly, leaving the edges. Michael is 43 years old, lean and unhurried in the way that serious people sometimes are. He has sandy brown hair going gray at the temples and pale eyes that tend to stay on a thing longer than most people are comfortable with. He has spent 17 years working major crimes for the Boston Police Department. He is not easily surprised. This surprises him. He walks the room slowly, making notes. He spends a long time in the East Gallery, standing in front of the enormous Flemish landscape still hanging on the wall, still perfectly untouched, still worth $40 million. He puts a small mark in his notepad next to the words, "Left behind. Why?" In the basement, the security system technician gives him the bad news. 2 full hours of corridor footage from 10:30 in the evening until midnight are gone from the recording system. Not corrupted, not damaged, simply absent, as if someone had reached into the machine and pulled out only those minutes. Michael asks the technician how that is possible without physical access to the recording unit. The technician says it isn't possible without knowing exactly where the unit is located and how it is configured. Michael writes in his notepad, "Somebody told them where to look." He interviews Danny Holt for 90 minutes. Danny is pale and shaken, but clear in his memory. 2 men, white, American, one older and heavier, one younger and lean. Uniforms correct in every detail, no accent, no distinguishing marks that he could recall. They had known his name. They had called him by it when they approached the desk. Danny had assumed they had accessed it from a dispatch log. Michael sits back. He considers this for a long time. A dispatch log would not contain the name of a specific guard on a specific shift. Somebody had told them Danny Holt would be at that desk that night. Chapter 4. The Inside Connection. Over the following 10 days, Michael interviews every member of the Hargrove staff, curators, administrators, maintenance workers, part-time security personnel, volunteers. He interviews the director, a composed woman named Catherine Farrow, who answers everything calmly and offers complete cooperation. He interviews the head of security, a retired police officer named Gerald Pruitt, who seems genuinely devastated. The interviews produce a quiet fog of small inconsistencies. A maintenance worker remembers seeing a van parked outside the service entrance 3 nights before the theft, but says nothing until the 3rd time Michael speaks to him. A curatorial assistant gives 2 different versions of where she was on the night of the theft. A volunteer docent mentions, almost in passing, that she had recently noticed a door to the archive room left open that should have been locked, but cannot remember exactly when. None of it is enough on its own. Together it suggests something porous, something that leaks. Michael pulls the employment records going back 5 years. He finds a name, Owen Marsh. Owen Marsh had worked at the Hargrove as a paintings conservator and restorer for 6 years. He had left, or been asked to leave, depending on who you talk to, 7 months before the robbery. The official personnel file listed the reason as a budget restructuring. 2 staff members, when pressed, said privately that Owen had been let go after a disagreement with the director over access to the archive collection. They did not know what specifically the disagreement was about. Owen knew the layout of the museum completely. He knew the security system's configuration. He had worked in every room, on every floor. A background check turns up a connection that stops Michael cold. Owen Marsh had a brother-in-law with documented ties to an organized crime network operating out of the Northeast. Men who specialized in the acquisition and quiet movement of valuable objects across international borders. Men who had, over 15 years, never once been successfully prosecuted. Then a woman named Patricia Gould, a retired museum donor who lived 3 blocks from the Hargrove, contacts Michael's precinct with a piece of information she had been sitting on for 2 weeks. She had seen 2 men talking outside a bar on Tremont Street in early January, 6 weeks before the robbery. One of them she recognized as Owen Marsh. The other was a broad, heavy-set man she did not know. He was wearing a jacket with a police department insignia on the sleeve.
Michael has a photograph of Owen Marsh circulated to every bar and restaurant within a half-mile of the museum. 3 responses come back within a week. Owen had been seen in the neighborhood repeatedly in the months before the theft. He was always with different people. He was always careful about where he sat. Owen Marsh himself is gone. His apartment has been vacated. His car is not at any registered address. His phone has been disconnected. Michael notes in his file, he knew what was coming and he left before it happened. That means he knew it would end badly for someone. Chapter 5. The painting that didn't matter. Michael brings in an art historian named Dr. Frank Aldridge from a university in Cambridge. He asks Aldridge to go through the list of stolen items and give him an honest assessment, not of the monetary value, but of why anyone with knowledge of the art world would specifically want these particular pieces. Aldridge studies the list for a long time. He says that from a collector's standpoint, from an investment standpoint, from almost any rational standpoint, the selection is baffling, with one possible exception. He points to the small Italian canvas. It is a minor work by a painter named Giulio Ferri, active in the 1680s. Not famous, not historically significant. The painting itself, a figure study, a man seated in shadow, is competent but not remarkable. Its value at auction would be perhaps $30,000. It is the least valuable item on the entire stolen list. Aldridge asks Michael if he knows how the painting came to the Hargrove. Michael does not. They pull the donation records. The painting had been given to the museum in 1954 by a man named Thomas Renfield, a Boston businessman with broad interests in European trade. The donation file contains an inventory sheet, a certificate of authentication, and a sealed letter, catalogued as a personal note from the donor, filed with the painting's paperwork, never opened, never examined. It had sat in the archive for 38 years. They have it opened.
Inside is a single page. It contains a list of names, 12 in total, prominent figures in finance, law, and civic life in Boston in the 1950s, alongside a series of notations that appear to be dates and transaction references. At the bottom of the page, a short handwritten note. If this finds the wrong hands, then we were already found. Michael reads it twice, then he says quietly, "They were never here for the art." Chapter 6. Secrets Buried in the Past. The 12 names on Thomas Renfield's letter are a thread that unravels slowly and leads somewhere dark. Michael spends 3 weeks tracing what he can. Several of the names are dead. 2 are still living, elderly men in their 80s, one in a care facility in Newton, one retired to a house on the Cape. Both of them refuse to speak to him. The man in Newton has his attorney call the precinct within hours of Michael's visit. The attorney is polite but clear. His client has nothing to say about anything related to the Hargrove Museum. A retired archivist named Harold Greer, who had worked at the museum in the 1960s and knew the donation records well, agrees to meet Michael for coffee. He is 72, careful with his words. He tells Michael that the Renfield donation had always been considered unusual internally, that there had been a quiet understanding among certain senior staff that the letter accompanying the painting was not to be discussed or disturbed. Harold Greer leaves Boston 4 days after this conversation. He leaves no forwarding address. A handwritten note appears under Michael's apartment door on a Thursday night, printed in block letters on plain white paper. "You are looking at the wrong crime." Michael photographs it and adds it to his file. His supervising lieutenant, a careful man named Captain Roy Braddock, calls him in and suggests that the robbery investigation should remain focused on the stolen artwork and potential fencing networks, that pursuing the historical angle is beyond the scope of the case and the capacity of the department. He says this without hostility. He says it twice. Michael thanks him and says nothing. Chapter 7. The Mastermind's Plan. Michael pins everything to the wall of his spare bedroom and looks at it for a long time.
The two fake officers were professionals, hired hands almost certainly brought in through Owen Marsh's connection to the organized crime network. They executed the robbery cleanly and disappeared. They were paid to do a job, and they did it. They did not know, Michael is now certain, what the job was really for. Owen Marsh was the link between the museum and the criminal network. He had provided the inside knowledge, the layout, the guard schedule, Danny Holt's name, the location of the security recording unit. Owen had been recruited for exactly this knowledge. But Owen, too, was being used. He had been given a list of items to take, items that included the fairy painting, without being told why. The person who built this had worked carefully. Every layer of the operation was isolated from the one above it. The robbers knew Owen. Owen knew a name he had never met in person. That name traced back, through 3 separate intermediaries, to a man Michael comes to know only as a set of initials in a transaction record from 1987, C.W. C.W. had, over the course of 15 years, quietly acquired connections to multiple civic institutions in Boston. He had served on advisory boards. He had made donations. He had positioned himself, methodically and without apparent urgency, in places where certain historical records were held and where certain historical secrets might resurface. The letter in the Renfield file named people whose descendants were still powerful. If the contents of that letter had ever reached a journalist or a prosecutor, the consequences would have been significant. C.W. had known the letter existed. He had known, perhaps for years, that it was filed inside the archive behind a cataloged painting. He had known that the only way to make it disappear without drawing attention was to make the disappearance look like something else entirely. The robbery was the distraction. The target was the letter. Michael can see it completely. He can follow every step from beginning to end. He writes it out in 12 pages of careful, precise notes. He has no physical evidence that would survive a courtroom. C.W. is a set of initials in a document that itself has now vanished. Every person who could have provided direct testimony has either left the city or declined to speak. Owen Marsh is gone. The 2 officers are gone. The logic is airtight. The proof is nothing. Michael sits at his kitchen table at 2 a.m. and looks at what he has built, and knows that knowing is not the same as proving, and that some people understand this better than anyone. Chapter 8. The Mystery Lives On. The case goes cold in the spring of 1993. The stolen artwork is never recovered, no arrests are made, no credible suspects are officially named. The investigation is formally downgraded to an open cold case, assigned a file number, and moved to a shelf. The Hargrove Museum rehires and expands its security staff. It installs a new camera system. In the East Gallery and the Dutch Masters Corridor and the 3rd-floor drawing room, the walls where the stolen pieces had hung are left bare, not repainted, not replaced with other works. The empty spaces are preserved deliberately, rectangular outlines of slightly different paint where the frames once sat. A quiet, permanent acknowledgement that something was taken and has not come back. Michael Reed is reassigned to a homicide unit. He is good at his job. He moves forward. He keeps one manila folder in the top drawer of his desk at home. Inside, photocopies of his notes. A photograph of the empty wall in the Dutch Masters Corridor. A transcription of the Renfield letter, made before the original was processed into evidence, and subsequently, somehow, misfiled into an inaccessible storage category. The name C.W. written in pen at the top of the last page, circled once. Years pass. Michael is 56 when he gets the call. He has been retired for 2 years. He is living in a quieter part of the city, and on a Tuesday morning in late autumn, he is sitting at his kitchen table reading the newspaper when his phone rings. It is a former colleague. She tells him she has seen something, an image, a photograph in a small European auction catalog that a friend overseas had passed along. One of the lots listed for an upcoming sale in a minor auction house in the south of France. The photograph is grainy, low resolution, but the image in it is a figure study. A man seated in shadow. Michael is very still. He knows the painting immediately. He has memorized every item on that list. He sets down his coffee. He reaches for the phone with the other hand. His face in that moment holds everything the investigation has cost him: the years, the certainty without proof, the silence of people who knew and would not say. But his eyes are alive in a way they have not been in a long time. The file has been waiting in the drawer. It is still there. The paintings were stolen that night, but whatever they were really looking for may still be missing today.